What is up, YouTube? So today we are going to be working on the Chevy C10 truck, and we're going to be doing some upgrades. So let's see what we got to upgrade.
Today we're going to upgrade the rear brakes, which is in these boxes, I believe, right?
All right, let's get started. So if you guys remember, we did do the front brakes. I have a full video on that that's detailed. That video, like I said, is detailed, so it covers every single step, which I'm assuming most of you guys don't like that because it's a very long video and didn't get that many views. So on this one, we're gonna do a quick video on replacing the rear brake pads. Obviously, you see we have drums here. We were planning to stick with drums for a while and keep the fronts upgraded because all of the braking power usually goes to the front. But we reached out to Pro Tool Restore and they were able to sponsor this video. So you guys make sure you give them a follow. If you guys need any parts like these or anything else for your other swap, definitely reach out to them. You can call them at this phone number for a quote. A lot of parts they don't have online. So if you need anything specific, make sure you reach out to them. So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna jack up the car. I'm in the truck, pull the wheels off, and then drain the fluid on the rear differential. All right, guys, as you can see, we got the wheels off. So next we are gonna drain the rear diff. So obviously we have an aftermarket cover. So it has a drain tube and a fill tube. If you have the stock one, they usually have a fill tube, but they won't have a drain. So if that's the case, you're gonna have to break them all loose and then crack the cover open. Now when you do that on your stock one, if it hasn't been taken off in a while, it's gonna be hard to take it off. So what you don't wanna do is pry on it with like a screwdriver or anything, because you don't wanna damage the sealing surface. There's a gasket in between here. What I recommend, if it hasn't been moved in a while, is grab a rubber mallet and then smack it around, try to break that seal loose, and then try to like eventually work your way around and pull it out. If you want to pry on it, be very gentle because you don't want to damage the sealing surface. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this out. In there is gonna be 2 C-clips, one on each side, and then once we pull those C-clips out, we'll be able to pull the axles out. All right, guys, so we got it draining. Now, just a heads up, if you guys never done this before, this thing is very smelly. So if you get it on your hands, it's probably gonna smell for a while. As you can see, I took all the bolts out. I left 2 bolts on there very loose. So I took them out, I put in a couple threads on both sides. And then I kind of just tapped on the case a little bit, tapped on it, and it broke loose. So that's gonna be easier to drain. If you just drain it through the plug by itself, it drains real slow because it's very thick oil. Even taking this off here didn't help it out much. But if you're in a rush or you want to get it done quickly, I'd say drain it like this, just popping off all the screws, maybe put a couple threads in on that one and that one, tap it, once it breaks loose, just let it drain out. All right, guys, so next we gotta pull the center pin off of the rear diff. Now it doesn't matter what kind of diff you have, they're all gonna usually have a center pin. So we're gonna rotate the diff, make sure your vehicle is in neutral, so you can spin it and make sure it's chocked, obviously. So when you spin it, you will see the bolt here. We're gonna take that out bolt off. Then after we pull that bolt off, we'll be able to pull the center pin off. We'll be able to push in our axles and then remove the C-clips. All right, so once you take out the bolt, you should be able to slide this pin out. Now, if it is tight, like if it's a brand new unit, you don't want to tap it on from the top and the bottom back and forth, work a little bit. Just don't go too far one way, because if you rotate it that way, it might hit the pinion. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and mark these when it comes out, so it's easier to line up and I don't have to twist it as much when I put it in. That way this bolt hole lines up with that one. And once it's out, like such, then we should be able to rotate it again. Now there's 2 sections where it's open like this. There's one on the back, you see where it has the springs closer. You wanna get to the part where it allows you to get in here. We're gonna go ahead and push the axles in and pull the C-clips out. Push it in as hard as you can. Now there's a C-clip that we want. You can almost see it coming out. You gotta rotate it out because it is a C. Push it in as hard as you can. There, right there, hold that. There it is. There's a C-clip that holds it in. So now you can see when she pulls it out, slowly, pull it out slowly, the whole axle will come out. All right, stop. Do the same thing for the other side. Push it in. There you go, perfect. Now let me pull that C-clip out. Oh, it fell in the oil. There you go. That's what it looks like. Yours probably won't have that much oil. All right, so with the C-clips out, we can go ahead and pull the axles out. Now you want to be careful with the seal here. Try not to damage it when you pull it out. And some people set them up like this when they store them. I'm going to go ahead. Actually, I'm going to put it in the garage. I don't think it matters, but make sure you just put the left one back on the left side, the right one on the right side. I don't think it matters, but we want to put everything back how it came out. All right, so next we got to pull off the backing plate and the brakes, but I think I'm going to take a shortcut and just take off the bolts here, and then the whole thing should come off, and then we'll unhook the parking brake. And real quick, I know I don't usually like doing unboxing videos because I think they're for kids, but this is everything that came out of the box. A reminder again, these rotors are vented at a certain angle, so you want to make sure you put the left on the left side, the right in the right side. For those of you that don't know, as you sit in the vehicle, this will be your left, that'll be your right. Because most of the hardware, what it didn't come with is the bolts that bolt this onto your axle. Now this is, I believe it's the same kit for 12 bolt and 10 bolt, so maybe that's why they didn't include it. But either way, we're gonna reuse the bolts, and this is everything that came with the kit, so it looks like everything else is included, including the hose, the shims, the banjo bolts, the adapter, and everything else. So let's go ahead and pull the brakes off, the drum brakes, and continue with this. So now we got those 4 bolts loose. We're gonna take off the brake line off the back, and then it should hang there. All right, guys, so the bolts are off, the brake line is off. That's all you should need. Then we gotta unhook the brake line for the parking brake. Now we're gonna put the axles back in and then measure the distance from the face of the axle to, I believe it's the flange right here of the hub. All right, guys, so next up, we're gonna measure the standoff, which is from the face of the axle to the face of the axle housing. And I'm gonna put a plate here up against the face of that. That way I can just measure from the edge to the edge. And we're looking at around 2.5 inches. So we're gonna go ahead and zero out our gauge. And then we're gonna measure it, and we should be close to the spec. So that's pretty close. We're off by like 0.03, which is fine because there is movement in the axle when you're driving. So that should be good enough. So we're gonna go ahead and continue with the brake setup. All right, guys, real quick tip. Now, I was looking at these brake shoe assemblies, and you can see how they have a part number there. If the part number is the same, guys, that usually means it doesn't matter which side you put it on. Now, on this one, there's a 672-0191. On this one, there's a 671-0191. So obviously, it's a different part number. So I figured, hey, look, this one has an L. That must be the left side. This one has a R. That must be the right side. Well, I was wrong. If you look at the instructions tell you the 671 is going to be for the left side parking brake, which means the 671, which would be this one, 671 is going to be for the left side parking brake. So ignore the R. So that means this one is going to go on the left side. This one will go on the right side. You want to pivot them so that the parking brake lever is on the bottom. They say the 6 o'clock position, which is down here if you look at the clock. So this will be facing towards the front where the parking brake goes in. This little locking piece will go on the bottom, and the 671 will go on the left side of the vehicle. That one's gonna go on the right side of the vehicle. All right, so now we're gonna install the backing plate. And I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of Loctite on the back of the bolts and then tie it up with the impact, and then it should be good to go. All right guys, so the axles are back in. So one thing we did have to do on the axle, you can see here how we had to grind it down some, and that is because on our stock axle, it had the drum brakes, and this right here is like 0.005 inches wider than this one here. So we ground down the axle flange so that way this fits in now, and we did it on both sides, and now it fits perfectly. So now to put the axles in, just reverse the order. You push it all the way in, have someone, you see how it's moved a little bit, so push it all the way in, slide the C-clips in there. It's easier to use a magnet to hold it. Push the C-clip in there, hold the C-clip with your finger, pull the magnet off, and then have someone slide these out while you're holding the C-clip in there, and then that'll hold it in place. I didn't put the center piece, I don't know what it's called, the center bar, whatever it's called. I didn't put it in yet in case we got to take this apart, but now we're gonna put the brake rotor on there, and then we're gonna measure the freaking caliper to make sure it's centered. All right, the rotor is on. We're gonna throw on a couple of lug nuts just so we can make sure that the rotor is bottomed out to the hub. And then after that, we're gonna mount the caliper, and then we're gonna shim it to make sure that it's centered. All right guys, so we got the caliper shimmed up. It was a little tedious, so what you gotta do in order to shim this up is you gotta push the axle in as far as it will go, and then you're gonna pull the caliper this way. You can see the caliper is like a little floating caliper here. So as you pull the axle, push the axle in, you pull the caliper out, and then you can take a measurement up there and down here. And then that should be at least 0.02 inches. And then you're gonna pull the axle out and push the caliper in. And then you take a measurement up here and down here. So all these 4 points here, after you measure them, they should be at minimum 0.02 inches. So like I said, it is tedious. We ended up using a big spacer or a big one of these shims up top and two small ones, and the same thing for the bottom, a big one and two small ones. After that, it's set. You're gonna turn it down to 85 foot-pounds, and then it's gonna be these bolts right here, this one and this one down here. Now we can take the caliper off, put the brake pads back in there, and then we're done shimming it. Once you do that, you shouldn't ever have to shim it again. Anytime you replace the brake pads, you just pull the caliper off, which is these two bolts up here, this one and this one, and then you leave the back ones, this one back here, you leave those alone. So it is tedious, but definitely try to get it right so that way your pads wear out correctly and you won't have any issues in the future. You only do it one time, and after that you should be set. All right guys, brake pads are in. So I'll tell you guys right now, this is obviously the second fixed calipers that I've installed so far. The first ones were in the front. The other Baer system that I installed was the floating calipers. But I'll tell you what, one thing I don't like right off the bat is whenever you have to replace the brake pads, you have to pull the caliper off. I don't like that. I think the brake pads should come off pretty easy. So for example, on these Brembos here, just like the ones I have on the Chevelle, but these Brembos here, if you want to replace the brake pads, you don't take the caliper off. Pull the wheel off, pull that pin out right there, brake pads come out, new pads go in, pin goes back in, and you're done. So it's like a really easy job. Whereas these, every time I gotta do the brake pads, they won't slide out through the back. I gotta actually pull the caliper off, push them in, drop them down. That's how I replace them. Now I did torque down the bolts. All 4 bolts get torqued down to 85 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and continue. All right guys, so we got the brake lines on installed. You can see how we had to bend the original brake line. They ended up coming up here. So we had to bend it back and then add the little adapter. So that way it bolt onto the brake lines. So make sure when you're doing the brake lines, however you bend them, make sure it's gonna clear the rim so they're not sticking out way up here or something crazy, you know what I mean? Make sure they clear the rim. So the way I did it, I put on the braided line first, that way, and I had it loose so that way I could figure out where it would reach. Then I bent the hard line to make sure it matches that. I got the rear diff cover in. So if you're using this cover, the back bolts get torqued down to 25 foot-pounds. I'm using RTV instead of the gasket. Some people use a gasket with a little bit of RTV on each side. Some people just use RTV. Some people just use a gasket. Since it's a flat surface on both the axle housing and the cover plate, I think it's safe to use RTV. I talked to my diff guy. He said the same thing. Go ahead, just use RTV. You'll have a better seal. We'll see how that goes. Next up, we're gonna bleed it. Now, when people bleed the vehicles, there's a common, like a wife's tale, I guess you could say, kind of like how everybody thinks oil changes have to be done every 3,000 miles. Everybody thinks that when you bleed it, you have to start from the furthest point of the master cylinder, which would be that one over there, and then this one, and then that one, and then that one. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. You could do it in any order you freaking want. And since we didn't crack the front open and the reservoir is divided in two sections, the ones that only got drained was the back brakes. So we're gonna only bleed the back brakes, and we're gonna do that side first and then this side. Even though it doesn't matter, we're gonna stick to the tradition and just do that one first and then this one. And then after that, we gotta hook up the parking brake. All right, so you can see when we look at our master reservoir here, our master cylinder, you can see how the front one hasn't really dropped down, but the back one is the one that you lost all the fluid in. So we're just gonna fill the back one up and then probably use a half a container for that side and then half a container for this side and make sure we get all the air out. We're gonna vacuum bleed it. There's a couple ways to do it. You can do the old school way where you pump it, hold it, and then break it loose in the back. Now, if you do that way, if you have a proportioning valve like we do here, it might slide over to one side and block it. So just a heads up in case you stop getting fluid in the back, that's probably what happened. If you vacuum bleed it, it doesn't really happen. So I like to vacuum bleed it. And then once I vacuum bleed it and I start seeing fluid come out the back, I'll usually do what's called a gravity feed or gravity bleed. So I'll take the hose off after I'm done vacuum bleeding it, and then you see a couple bubbles come up. Let the bubbles come up. And then once the bubbles stop coming up and it's just brake fluid coming out, then you can close it, and then you should pretty much get rid of all the air in the vehicle. All right, so we got the vacuum bleeder hooked up. Now, if you look at the hose, you're not gonna see a lot of fluid come out of here, but it is sucking out mostly air, and eventually it'll start sucking out fluid. So just keep an eye on the bottom, make sure that's getting full. And you also wanna make sure you keep an eye on your reservoir, because if your reservoir gets low, then you're just sucking in air. So you see how that's halfway full. So now we're gonna add some more brake fluid as it's going down, and make sure that's at least halfway all the time, because if you let that get too low, you're gonna suck in air and then you gotta start all over again. All right, so once you fill up about the reservoir up in the front about twice on this one here, so you'll see it go down and then top it off. You'll see it go to the halfway point and top it off. That should be enough brake fluid. So then what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn off our vacuum bleeder, and let's see if we can get that money shot right here. There's one ton about right here, watch. So you pull it up and look at the brake bleeder. I don't know if you can focus on that, but you'll see right now. Tap it a little bit until you start seeing, you see where it's bubbling now? A little bit of bubbles. And then once it comes out, straight fluid like right there. You see how that's just straight fluid and it's barely tipping over. Now this is what's called gravity bleeding. So once you get that, that means pretty much all the air is out. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten that up with our 10 millimeter. This only works if the reservoir is higher than the actual bleeder screw. So we're gonna go ahead and then tighten that up. Now obviously there's a bunch of different ways to bleed the system. This is how I do it, and I've had great success. And then don't start the car. You don't want power brakes right now. You just want to feel the brakes manually. So without vacuum boost, without freaking your hydro boost kicking in. So just pump the brakes a couple times. If it feels really hard, these should collapse. It should feel really hard, the brakes, and you can push the brakes, hold them, and then have someone try to spin the axle while the vehicle is in neutral, and these should not spin. Once they release the brakes, they should spin. All right, so we just finished bleeding the brakes. So next we're gonna top off the rear diff. So we're gonna use additive because we have an Auburn Posi unit. So we're gonna drop in one of these additives, and then we're gonna drop in the non-synthetic rear diff fluid, or gear oil as it's called. This is some stuff that my shop gets in barrels, so they're selling it to me in like little jugs. So you're gonna fill this up until it starts pouring out like that. Now I already put 2 bags in there. I'm gonna go ahead and put one. Oh shit, I'm gonna go ahead and put one more bag, if it fits. So you'll squeeze it. You saw some coming out already, so we're gonna go ahead and check it. I'm gonna squeeze half of that in there, maybe a little bit less, and then see if it starts leaking out. So we're gonna get our rag, wipe that down, see how it's coming out. So that means it's full, probably perfectly topped off, so we're good. Now we're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of blue Loctite here to keep it from leaking out, and then just snug it down. All right guys, so the rear brakes are done. Now we're gonna go ahead and take it out for a spin, and then we're gonna bed in the rear brakes. Now as always guys, make sure you check out my Instagram. I have a lot more videos there. But off next, on this truck, I think we're done as far as modifying it. So don't forget guys, if you guys want to pick up your own set of Baer brakes, hit up Pro Touring Store. There's also a video for the front brakes if you didn't catch that. But we are done with this one. So we'll catch you on the next video guys.